This is the 46 of 46 podcast Summit Sessions, where we'll talk all things Adirondack, backcountry, and beyond. From high peak stories and adventures to trail tips and tricks, we'll dive deep into the heart of these mountains and the people who passionately climb them. Adirondack maps and spruce traps, bushwhacks and backpacks. It's all here on the 46 of 46 Summit Sessions. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Summit Sessions here on the 46 of 46 podcast, where we just chat all about the outdoor adventures those of us are having here in the Adirondack Park, the best place on earth if you're into outdoor recreation. And this week, I have a very familiar face and familiar name right here in studio with me because he lives right down the street and he has been adventuring like an SOB this winter here in the Adirondacks. You probably follow him on social media. His name is Jonathan Zaharek, and he's here to talk all about his current winter quest of completing the first winter redline of the high peaks. And if you remember last year, Jonathan completed a single season winter 46. Was that last year or the year before?
Actually, it was 2 winters ago now.
2 winters ago. Wow. Okay.
Time's flying.
Time is flying. However, Jonathan is always out there challenging himself to new, exciting adventures. And today we're going to hear all about his winter trips out into the high peaks as he seeks to hit every marked trail in the high peaks, which includes winter camping, winter skiing down some of these mountains. It's going to be an interesting conversation. Jonathan, thanks for coming over.
I'm glad to be here again. I mean, I think I recall in one of your last Summit Sessions with Matt, which, by the way, that was awesome. Loved the 2-part. And Matt, if you're listening, I didn't get a chance to like congratulate you necessarily because you don't have social media, so it's hard to contact you. But I loved the episode, and it was very inspirational. And thanks, James, for putting that out. And you said I'm like the unofficial co-host of the show.
Yes,
I kind of find that funny.
You are.
But we're all just doing what we love, and hopefully, people can take away from these episodes.
Yeah. So
it's cold. It's snowy,
dude. It has been. So we're in February right now. Early February.
It is Valentine's Day.
It is Valentine's Day. I appreciate you coming over here with short notice. I even had to make him a cup of coffee. Mm-hmm. That was part of the deal.
He interrupted ski plans. You actually interrupted my winter redline because I'm going out to do that right now, but luckily it's only a 5-mile day.
Well, we thank you for coming over to have this conversation with us. Now, you always are creating these goals for yourself. Mm-hmm. And
that's a good example. What you just said, I'm creating my own goals. Yes. I'm not necessarily following other people's challenges.
Yeah, and I love it. I love it. I mean, I'm all about that. Like you can create your own adventure, and I have some of these episodes every so often that are called the Summit Session Spotlight, where that's what those episodes do is I highlight people who created their own adventure based on where they live that wasn't necessarily a thing, but they could create it as a thing for themselves, and I just love to showcase that. And this, I guess, would be kind of what you're doing here, even though this whole podcast is about the Adirondacks, so it actually makes sense for that subject as well. But it's been cold here lately in the Adirondacks. If you've been up here, how many days in January was it below zero?
Yeah, I think it was 3 weeks total, so 21 days about below zero. And that's not normal for January. That's normally like right now, mid-February. And I think there was 5 days below -20 in the morning.
That's probably it, because it was just I remember it was 8 degrees, and I looked at my thermometer, and I was like, "Oh, it's a great day. It's 8 degrees out there. That's how cold it's been. That 8 degrees felt like and looked like it was 40, 50 degrees."
And I just got back from Arizona this past week, and I was skiing out there too, but it's I was up in the higher elevation, and so it was still in the in the lows in the 30s and 40s, and it was 50 in the day. But then I went down to Phoenix, and it was 75 and sunny, and I was getting summer vibes, and
wow,
I was smelling the fresh pine tree desert air, and just just being like, wow, I'm excited for the summer.
Summer will be good.
But I know I'm about to fly back to the Adirondacks.
Yep. And then you get back and your car is probably covered in snow.
Oh my word. It was thick with ice and snow from the winter storm we had a week ago. And it took me a good 5 minutes to clear off my car. So
I haven't heard about Arizona. So tell me real quick, just a little bit about what you did when you were out there.
Yeah. So I went out there to visit two friends, my friends John and Claire that I knew back in Ohio before I moved here, and they live out in Arizona. And so I went out there just for fun to recreate with them. I did something called the Four Peaks Traverse, which it's a class 4, class 5 technical alpine trek. So it's not really hiking, but you're roped up and everything, traversing along these knife edges and whatever. And I just uploaded that as well to my YouTube channel. And so I'm really happy with how that whole trip turned out. There was a lot of things that caught us off guard, good things, and learned a lot through there. But then after that, enjoying some desert sun, went skiing at the Snow Bowl in Flagstaff, and then went back down to Phoenix for the remainder of my time with a friend, just chilling. Kind of like everyone needs like a midwinter break.
Absolutely.
Everyone's in midwinter break, and that was kind of like I'll go out. I like to collect airline miles, and I was just like,
See, I like the midwinter break in that like late March, because at least when you come back and it's about to be April, like the snow's slowly going to start leaving and the warm weather's kind of coming in, even though I don't say winter's over until like the second week of May here in the Adirondacks, because typically we get some sort of
flurry,
snowfall, storm the first week of May, last week of April, pretty much every year.
And the late springtime, for some people, they might go to Florida or something like that. But, I think for at least skiers, it's very much like, okay, spring skiing, let's go out west.
Sure,
ton
absolutely.
of powder, worms,
and it's still warm out there. It's a different type of warm and temperature and weather and everything, all that. Well, that's cool. So welcome back to the sub-zero Arctic Adirondack Park.
My toes are cold.
Yeah, I believe it. So take me through, explain to the listeners exactly what redlining is for starters, and why this is like the goal that you have this winter.
Yeah. So, redlining is a common term amongst hikers, at least from what I've learned. It's just not common in the Adirondacks, and so I think here, like, I found more people like whoa, what's a red line? But in New Hampshire, it's a common thing because there's redlining the whites, and there's plenty of people who have and that are doing it, and so like people who hike in New Hampshire might have heard of it and whatever, but there's not really any redliners in the Adirondacks. I think that's just because the trail systems are entirely different. We have an entirely different hiking community. And challenges are different too. I don't know. It's just different. You can't really compare the whites to the Adirondacks. And so a man by the name of Eric Schlimmer, which I think a few people listening to this might know, incredible outdoorsman. He's done like 3,000 plus summits, I think. Yeah. And he's hiked. I mean, he pretty much is like the godfather of hiking in the Adirondacks in this era.
I think he's hit like every peak
above
in
3,
the Northeast above 3,000 feet.
Really? Is it 3,000, 35?
I'm pretty sure it's 3,000 feet. Eric, if I'm wrong, my apologies. But we'll have to have you back on the episode soon to talk, or the podcast to talk about that.
Nuts.
It's been a while. But he's
out in Colorado now.
A savage out there on the trails.
Yeah. So he wrote a book called Amongst the Cloud Splitters, which I think is probably the most beautiful book I've ever read. Like listen, I don't read often, I'm going to come out and say that I don't read a lot. Well, at least I don't take time to open up a book and just read, and I'm getting my information from, the device
from
now,
the telephone.
Yeah. But, whenever I crack open a book, my attention span is kind of short, but this book, and lo and behold, obviously it's about the Adirondacks, and what the book entails is it's basically going in detail about every single toponym of the High Peaks region. Every single named river, mountaintop, lake, pond, stream, a mountainous area. It explains every single name, the history, why it's named it, the first person to go there, and it's beautiful. It answers so many questions. Like, I didn't realize that Gray Peak should not actually be a high peak, and that it only rises 136 feet above the col between Marcy, and that Little Marcy is technically more of a high peak than Gray, because it rises more than Gray, and little things like that. And there's actually a challenge in that book that no one, I guess, has ever done, but Eric's just making challenges now. He's just randomly making challenges, but it's visiting every toponym. I want to say it's like 220 something.
Okay.
And there are like more, but they are USGS toponyms, right? So something that you would open up your Nat Geo map and actually physically see. So he has that challenge in there. So I don't know who's going to be the first completer of that. It's going to, I mean, there's nutty stuff in there. Like
something to do this summer
like,
for you, perhaps?
There's summer. There's stuff in there he's claiming no one's gone to in nearly a century.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Which I obviously, people who go to these things generally aren't the social media type at all. And so they kind of just
Sure.
do it and they don't even tell anyone. So, I mean, who knows? And so as well in this book, this is the guidebook to something that he officially created, a challenge that he officially created called the High Peaks Wilderness Area Redline. And when he created it, which was, I want to say it was maybe like 10 years ago, there's definitely been completers of this, but prior to like 2010 or whatever, most people aren't like coming out and being like, oh yeah, I went and did this, whatever.
Social media wasn't quite the thing in 2010 as it is today.
Yeah, so he created this challenge, which is hiking every mile of every single marked trail within High Peaks Wilderness. And he created it at the time when it was just the Western High Peaks and like Central High Peaks that we know today. Mm-hmm. It didn't include Dick's Mountain Wilderness, Giant Mountain Wilderness, Whiteface, and Esther. And now today, obviously, we have Eastern and Western High Peaks. And he does acknowledge in the challenge that you can complete these, but it's not necessarily a requirement. But like if you're out hiking, a lot of those trails to the east are pretty like you're gonna hike them. Like if you're doing the 46, there's only a few trails that you might have to go out of your way for, like the north side of Giant or like Hunter's Pass on the Dix Range or whatever. And so there's a lot of trails, but when you stretch all the trails together, there's 250 miles, and that's not including out and backing or whatever. That's just when you stretch them all together in a straight line. There was about 268 miles, I think, and I don't know what the vert was, but once you do all of them, it's about, well, at least from what I crunched, gathering my stats and everything, was just over 600 miles and around 150,000 vert. You almost go over each high peak like 3 times, which is crazy. But there's a lot of trails that aren't on the challenge. Like, for example, the Santanoni Range, the Sewards, none of those even, like Allen, the trail to like, I think the Opalescent then is like past that is not on there.
Sure. Because it's technically a herd path.
Right. So, Street Nye isn't on there. Yep. So it's anything that's
marked.
It only has to be marked, but that doesn't mean maintained. Right.
Sure.
So people are like, oh, it's all the easy marked trails. Like, no, there's a ton of stuff that people do not touch, period. Like, you're going back there, you get lost, you're going to die. Yeah. Like you're not getting out of it.
It hits not a lot of, but like part of the Northville-Placid Trail is on that list. Yeah. And the part that's back there is very never been touched by anyone in the last 50 plus years.
Right. So I went and last summer, towards the beginning of the summer, I read this book. I was excited about the book, and but the reason why I got the book was simply because I needed to know that book was the guide to know what trails you need to hit, because it's the kind of confusion. What trails do I need to hit? What trails do I not need to hit? What's regulatory? And Eric, being map and compass guy, he's doing this all just like from the map. And so there are definitely some things that I'm like, maybe, we should maybe take this out, and or maybe we should include this, or I had a ton of questions. And so what I also did was I took the liberty to actually digitally create the entire red line on Caltopo so I could actually get a visual reference and then knock them off, because that's just how I process things. So after doing that, I put them all on a map and on Caltopo, and I started deleting one at a time every single trail that I did. And I, lo and behold, had like 75% of it already done, coincidentally.
From just previous hiking.
Yeah.
And awesome.
Guiding and just taking different routes and whatever. And once I realized that, I was like, whoa. If I'm actually intentional with this, the same thing with me doing my grid 46.
Sure.
It's like I realized I was already super, I was already like 7 months almost like complete of doing that. I was like, well, hey, look, I'll just try to continue to do that, which I've put off to the side right now because I realize I just, I'm not going to go and hike the high peaks when I don't want to, because I just think that's kind of disrespecting them. And I'm not saying like it's not type 2 fun that I'm avoiding. It's just like, you don't want to, if you're hanging out with a best friend and you don't want to be there the whole time, then you're kind of just like disrespecting them by not being, by being there.
You don't want to get to the point too where you start to lose that appreciation, the love, and just the desire to be out there. Like if you're getting burnt out from it, you should step away, because guarantee you step away for a while and you come back eventually, you'll just have that that rebirth within your soul of being in these mountains.
And for the record, like I'm not like, no, I know, like, really at the end of the day, no one cares like that I'm doing these challenges, right? As if you're not doing it for yourself, then you're not doing it for anything else, like, noteworthy. You have to start with like, you're doing it for yourself, and that's like the sole purpose before you can include anything else to that. And so it's like, completing the grid, I also realized, no one cares if I actually really finish this. You might have inspired a few people, but it's entirely for me.
Totally.
Say, and the 46, doing the 46 as well, it's kind of like the same thing. I'm not trying to take away from it, but really at the end of the day, being in the outdoors should really at the end of the day solely just be for you. Yes. For someone like me, I find enjoyment, and I've found the ability to be able to take that and put it out for other people to see. And I find a lot of enjoyment, but that's not the reason why I'm going out. Like, I mean, like anyone here that's listening to this that knows my YouTube channel, I put out a video once a month, maybe 2 a month now, simply just because like I'm not out recording everything new, or every single time I go out. I'm just out enjoying the park.
Sounds a lot like the current release schedule of my own very podcast that you're listening to right now. People are like, I get messages from people, you haven't really done like hiking episodes lately. Are you not really out hiking anymore? It's like, no, I definitely am. And I was actually talking to Paul from Aptitude Outdoors podcast, who's a good friend of mine, lately, about how like I'm still out there. Sometimes you want to go out there without a microphone attached to my backpack. And I just want to not have to focus so much on the details of the trail of, like when I'm out hiking for a podcast episode, I am really having to focus on every detail so I can retell the story and get all those little details. But sometimes I just want to go out and hike. Leave me alone. I love doing the podcast and retelling my stories and like listening to it. But there's a very different kind of vibe when you go out to just go hike versus when you go out to turn it into a YouTube video or a podcast, or you have a camera attached to you.
And that wasn't the intention in the first place. I was just doing it because I like doing it.
Yeah, of course.
And then learned,
As do we all.
I learned a lot, like mistakes, and hopefully since then trying to cover up a lot of, hopefully people can see that I've put an effort into like to learn and to change. And, with that, so kind of to go back into what we were talking about, like, I just want to kind of say like the only reason why it seems like I'm all about the high peaks, gung-ho about the high peaks, is simply just because out of everything that the park offers, that just is what I'm naturally drawn to the most. I was raised spending my summers in the southern region. Like I hiked everything in the southern regions and the western regions, and stuff all about by Indian Lake and down in Hamilton County. And so it's like I've spent my time out there, and many miles in the park outside of the high peaks, and just find the high peaks is what makes me come alive the most. I talk about that in my Winter 46 short film and my regular 46 short film. And, so doing a challenge like this isn't because I'm just trying to solely recreate only in the high peaks. It's simply just that is where I feel the most connected to this park. Sure. And that just coincidentally is where a lot of people fit in.
Absolutely.
And I don't think it's because they're just like, I'm about, you have to peak bag and you have to be a 4,000 footer and all this. And I don't care about anything else. I show this to be true for myself, that because I have hiked a lot of stuff outside of the park and that I have given that the time of day and that I do appreciate other aspects of the park, to where then it is okay that I can continue to recreate in the high peaks, because I would be disrespecting the Adirondacks if I solely just recreated in the high peaks only and didn't care about the rest of the park.
Sure.
You've
also, like you said, you've hiked all over. You've hiked all over the park, but there's also people who are like totally the opposite. They don't come
to the high peaks.
Yeah. They stay in like that Lake George region,
and that's completely fine.
It's exactly, dude. It's fine. Go wherever you want. Also, like myself, you live in Lake Placid, so it's like that. The high peaks just also.
I'm not going to go do the tongue range today.
Exactly.
Down in Lake George.
It's just it's a 5-minute drive to the Adirondack Lodge,
and it's the best part.
So it's
subjectively, it's the best part.
It's also just easy to, we don't have to drive.
Right.
We have, people are always like, oh man, you're so lucky you don't have to drive very far to go hiking. Yeah, well, I have to drive an hour to go to a mall or to go buy literally a pair of shoes. So I mean, there's a trade-off here.
I get annoyed having to drive to the Seward Range Trailhead.
No,
it's
dude.
like right there.
And that's why, like, just yesterday I was like, where do I want to hike today? I was telling my wife, I was like, man, I wish there were a bunch of smaller mountains that are closer, because it's like eventually you've done Van Hovenberg, Joe, Cobble. You've done these mountains so many times.
Then it turns into gas money.
I just wish there was something somewhat closer. It's like I don't even want to drive 15 minutes.
That's where bushwhacking comes into
play.
Yeah,
no, you're completely right.
And then the redline.
Completely right. And that's leading me to my thought is redlining allows you to experience the same area in a way that you likely haven't experienced before.
Or never would without doing the red line.
Totally. And you'd have no reason to hit some of these trails, except if you're just trying to hit a brand new trail. Now,
or you're a sociopath trying to get away from people.
Totally.
And you just
That's
threw
a whole
dart
other subject,
and you threw
though.
a dart onto the map and said, I'm going to go there.
Yep. That's a different subject. Now, with that, though, redlining is actually a very good way to spread out the foot
Absolutely.
traffic.
I wholeheartedly agree with you. And it also teaches a lot. It also gives you the opportunity to learn a lot about trail navigation, map and compass usage, especially because some of these trails aren't actually on the map, believe it or not. Like there's some newer ones or stuff that's been, like, for example, the Pine Point Trail, which is a offshoot trail 1.5 miles that goes from the Cold River, where the NPT crosses the Cold River, and it goes to the west towards the Racket River. And it's a marked trail in the High Peaks Wilderness, but it's not on the map.
That's not the trail at the end of Averyville, is it? What is that trail?
No, this is like where the Cold River...
Pine Pond? What am I thinking?
That's Pine Pond.
Pine Pond,
Yeah, but that is part of it.
Yeah,
but that's also like a snowmobiler one.
Sure,
It can be used for I think horseback ride. I don't even know. Like it's weird. There's some things that I'm like, should that really be part of it?
Understood.
And there's like connections from right there at the Cold River to Moose Pond north of Newcomb Lake. There's a whole trail network in there that's not on the map. So it's kind of weird. But
now,
anyways,
how let's just quick question.
Yeah.
How evident are those trails?
Oh yeah,
they're not even on the map. So how obvious are they?
I think so. Obviously, I did the summer one, right? So I completed the summer red line, and that Pine Point Trail was awful.
Okay,
it was absolutely awful. It wasn't that it was muddy; it was a literal jungle.
Yeah, it was just overgrown,
and there was bogs and stuff.
Yeah.
The reason why is because Pine Point exists because it's a canoe portage. Or not a portage necessarily, but that's a stopping point that people get out of the Ragged River to camp at. And I don't know necessarily what the point of the trail is unless you just want to stay at that campsite right on the river. But it's an access trail, I guess, but it's marked, and same thing with there's a ton of horse trails back there in that area. And so, the whole 15 miles of trails that connect from the Cold River down to Moose Pond, are just wide and wet. And they were abandoned logging roads type stuff.
Sure.
And they were some horse trails, but then they're kind of like horse trails that connect to marked trails that you have to take. So it kind of leads me into the whole ideology of that doing the red line is an opportunity to get out of the high peaks, but staying in the high peaks, because there are trails, and I mean this, there are trails on the red line, miles and miles of trails that within high peaks that less people hike than the least hiked trails in all the other wilderness zones of the Adirondacks. And you're like, well, that's Jonathan, how's that possible? Because it's still within high peaks wilderness. If it's not going to a high peak, people aren't hiking it. You know what I mean?
For sure.
Unless it's the NPT, or
that's about it.
Maybe
Probably just
the Cold River Loop around the Sewards or whatever. It's there's trails back there that no one is going to touch because it's just not necessary.
It doesn't.
Right?
They don't necessarily get you.
Overcrowding only exists where overcrowding is evident, right? So it's not necessarily overcrowding in a hole because there's plenty of places I can go, and no matter what time of year it is, no matter what day of the week it is, I can go there, and I could probably be the only one on that trail.
How many people does it take to be considered overcrowding? What's the number? Is it 7?
If you can,
is it 74? What's the actual number? So
what is the actual number?
What overcrowding means? Anyways, I don't want to get on that tangent, but anyways, keep going.
So I don't know how many people have completed the regular red line, but just for numbers' sake, I was the 10th completer, official completer. And other people like I think
Amanda Riggs.
Yeah, Amanda Riggs and Donna Merrill.
Blondell.
Yeah, Blondell. Yeah, I think she completed it, or she's on her road
I
to.
think Blondell.
Yeah, she did complete it because I've gone to her with questions. And so there are other completers, but I was kind of rushing to complete it towards the end of the summer because I selfishly wanted to make that top 10 roster.
Sure.
And then turns out since then the 11th finisher actually hasn't completed it yet, so I didn't know though. But that was honestly when I finished my 46, like it was a great moment. It was awesome, but finishing the red line was like it was thrilling. Like I finished on Haystack, the backside going up the backside of Haystack. And I don't know, something about it was just like, it wasn't like okay, well, what do I do now? I just felt like I got to know the High Peaks area in such a more intimate way. And I actually did go through a lot to get that done. I was, in the summertime, I'm like heavily in the trail running. And so I would literally go out and do 41 miles in a day.
I saw those videos and pictures.
Like I would just go and just like after dinner, because the sun set late and whatever, at like, 4 p.m., I'd just be like, hey, I'm going to go talking to my roommate. I'm like, hey, I'm just going to go do this quick 16-mile trail run, be back by like 7 p.m., something like that before the sun goes down. And so what's really good about the red line is being in shape. Because if you can do it fast, it's a lot easier than having to turn some of these 20, 30, 40 miles into an overnight and just walking, But I'll tell you, my least favorite section in the summertime was that whole Moose Pond area, the Newcomb Lake, Moose Pond, Cold River section, everything east of Long Lake, I guess. The NPT portion was awesome, but everything back there was just so wet, and it's hard to get everything back there in a single day. Just because of you have to backtrack stuff, and it turns into like 41 miles. And you're just so secluded, and you just get whatever conditions you get. So there's definitely a lot of rough stuff. But anyways, back to the whole like overcrowding thing with not overcrowding, but just the usage of these trails. I obviously don't know this for certain, but educational guess, I would say once I go back to these areas that no one generally goes to, even in the summertime, I very well could be the first person who touches it all year, a month and a half into the year, some of these trails, like Pine Point, for example. And again, back to the whole Moose Pond area, people just don't go back there, especially in the wintertime. I mean, there's great, probably cross-country skiing, but there's nothing back there at all.
You'd have to be a specific level of skier to go to some of these places in the winter, in particular, even with cross country skiing, like
because it's unconsolidated powder.
Yeah,
depending
and you're
on,
back there. If something goes wrong, you are get out yourself.
And again, there's a reason why, and we didn't state this yet, but no one has ever completed the red line in the winter season. And I think the reason why is because two reasons. One, no one's seeking it out. As far as I know, I'm the first person who's actually even thought about giving it a light of day, because Eric Schlimmer actually officially made it a challenge not too long ago, and it's still, I guess, getting exposure. More people are starting to, Jason from I can never pronounce his last name, like Parago. He was on Bethany's support team for the FKT.
Okay.
Long hair Jason, you know that. Sorry, I couldn't pronounce your last name. It's French. But he's doing the red line now.
Okay,
and I think it's cool
in the
to
winter.
See just a regular.
Okay.
As far as I know, and so I think it's great to see people going out and doing that, because it is spreading it out. I don't think it's like now bringing overcrowding into other places. I think it is giving people opportunities to, and I don't think it would ever turn into overcrowding in these other places, simply because no one seeks out like the red line. And really, so anyways, I decided earlier in, I think like maybe November, I said, you know what, I'm curious, how much of the High Peaks trails have I hiked in the wintertime? And I crunched it all together, put it on the map, deleted the trails that I've done, and it was like 70%. Now, out of the 650 miles, okay, it actually might be a little bit more than 70%, like less, like I have more to do. But out of the 650 miles, I only had like 250 left to go. And it was maybe 40,000 vert. And so to me, I look at that like, oh, that's easier than a single season winter. Especially now that I know how to backcountry ski really well. I'm just looking at these trails and I'm like, yo, this is it. Like, this is going to be what my winter goal is. And so I sought out to do that. And I haven't been. I think I've only done maybe 4 out of the what I realized. I think I had 17. I had 17 when I started. 17 separate trips that I had to do between the whole winter. And I've only done 4 since the start of winter, simply because I've been gone a lot of days. Like I think I've been gone almost 3 weeks combined out of this time since the December 21st. And then also there wasn't enough snow to do some of these trails that I really wanted to only do on skis. So I've been waiting, and we have 35 days left until the end of winter, and I have 13 outings left, and still probably around 230, 240 miles and around 40,000 vert left. But now that like I'm here and I'm not leaving until the end of winter, and we have a decent amount of snowpack, I'm just gonna kind of be cranking it out like 3 a week until I hopefully get it done. And the one thing that's really difficult about doing it, I mean, there's a pro and con with skiing and then snowshoeing all of this, right? The snowshoeing all of it, I mean, it's just gonna be a slog, and it's gonna be long, and it's gonna be treacherous. But if you can ski, it's every day can change how good your ski is, right? And the type of skis you bring. So it's really important to know what type of skis to go on the backcountry with, when you should go, because you can't expect some of these trails to be broken out at all, especially because the snowfalls that we've had this year haven't been like a lot of little snowfalls. It's been a few big snowfalls.
Yep.
And so we know like when that happens, the trails aren't just gradually being like broken out little bit by little bit. It's like
they disappear,
and then it's 2 weeks until everything is broken out. I mean, I like there was a time where Algonquin wasn't hiked from like Sunday to Saturday this year, is what I was told by at the lodge at one point during our first big snowfall. So yeah, a lot of this, I have like 4 or 5 trips that involve winter camping, and I have a winter hammock set up, and I went out and tested that a couple weeks ago out in -27 at the McIntyre Falls campsite. And I will say, though, there's a lot of places on the winter red line in these places that I am going to be overnighting where there are lean-tos. And so I would still rather sleep in a lean-to, have a nice thermal insulated pad and just a nice sleeping bag so I can just pack later. Because hammock camping it's awesome, but it's not necessarily efficient because of how much you might need to bring. It's lightweight if you have the right gear. But it definitely takes up a lot of space.
Well, let's talk about that real quick,
Sure.
because I've noticed, and I've seen all of your winter camping photos and videos, because you might text it to me or whatever, and you're out there. Would you say -27? You were out there because, as we mentioned earlier in the podcast, January has been freaking cold, unbelievably cold. So now you're doing some of these camping trips because it makes it easier to accomplish the red line, but I also know you're doing it just to see what it's like out there.
Like
in
I
these
mean,
temperatures.
I think the coldest I ever slept outside in my hammock was -9, and that
Okay.
was 2 days before. Because I know I have the right gear.
Yep.
I was just testing it out on my porch.
Sure, I remember seeing.
Yeah,
that.
so I tested it on my porch, and I was like, oh, okay, this is great. I feel completely fine. I think I can drop it another 20 degrees.
And drop another 20 degrees, and now be in the backcountry, not able to just like walk inside your
But
apartment.
listen, I was originally going to do this at Snowbird because it was the
I know.
highest campsite.
Exactly.
I wanted to do it the most extreme that I could. But then I was like, okay, John, you know what? Let's just think about this for a second. Look, really, what's the difference between 3,200 feet and 4,000 feet? It's going to be pretty similar. What you want? You want to be 9.5 miles out versus 2.5 miles for
Sure.
4-degree difference.
No, it makes sense.
So I'm like, let's just do McIntyre Falls.
Tell us some more about that. So tell us some more about what is your winter camping setup like?
Yeah.
What was it like? We can even go from like the first times you were camping in that type of temperature versus like, now that you're a couple trips in. Take us through the gear that you're using, and was it what you expected? Was it different? Was it not as bad? Was it worse? Like, I know that you mentioned one night about having to get up to take a piss.
Yeah.
That
So
must have been brutal.
the video, I did make another video about this on my YouTube channel, and the thing is, there wasn't a lot of retrospective tips. It was all about what I was learning in the moment, and there's a lot of insight and stuff that I have even now after that video that I would love to share. I will say this. It does not matter how good your setup is at winter hammocking and how comfortable you might be in that hammock and whatever. I still think at the end of the day, there's nothing that beats a tent. I think if you have a nice tent with the right pad and sleeping bag and whatever, then you're on flat level ground. It's cozy and it's not as uncomfortable And I think it's obviously that's why there's no trees out when they're doing mountaineering and stuff like that. Obviously, even if you think there were, I don't think you'd see people at base camp at Mount Everest sleeping in hammocks, even if there were trees. But I don't think hammock camping is necessarily something that's like, yo, this is the new age of winter camping. I think it's only for a specific type of person or a specific type of event. I don't actually even think it's necessarily practical, but it's an option. It is something that is. It's kind of like, owning a car that's not necessarily practical, but you can totally own it because you like that.
Sure.
That's just your thing. And so, I had this gear acquired from when I used to shoot marketing photos for Eagle Nest Outfitters, hammocks. And so I went down to their headquarters in Asheville to talk with them. And at the time, who was over my position, I guess, gave me this winter gear, which was like the best overquilt and underquilt that they had. So they're 35, maybe even 40 degree tech down. So like water repellent down, overquilt and underquilt. And I was going to take pictures of them, but I had the product. I also had a Eno double deluxe hammock, which is essentially like the largest hammock you can get. And then, over time, like I got a nice 0 degree sleeping bag and I got like some insulated pads and everything. And back before I moved to New York, I slept outside in my backyard in Ohio when it got really cold, like single digits and stuff like that, to test it out and whatever. And I was like, even in single digits, I was like burning up. And I'm like, this is a 0 degree sleeping bag, but adding everything else together, I don't know what its limits are. And it all being 100% like down, it's lightweight and I can compact it. And it's water repellent too, which is great. And I decided that this winter, I've always wanted to try to nail the coldest day of the year that I could get my hands on. And there was a lot of days between negative, I think we had the coldest so far was like minus 29. And the warmest, coldest day that we had was like minus 22. So minus 27, I can't complain. So I got pretty close. But the thing is, I'm not going out in those conditions recklessly, just doing it for the heck of it, right? I'm not going to go out there unless I genuinely believe common sense, rationally with my experience and how comfortable I am and how well I know what I'm doing. I'm only going to go out there knowing that I am not going to be putting other people at risk for going out.
Smart move too, doing it at your apartment the first time you did it too. I mean, like legitimately, you can learn so much that night by just doing it right there at your apartment, where it's no big deal, as opposed to the very first time being 2.5 to 9.5 miles deep in the woods.
That night I got up at 6 a.m. and I was like, all right, I've had enough. And I walked right into my bedroom and then unpacked it later. So that was nice. Kind of just to jump straight to that outing. I kind of did it so you don't have to type thing.
Nice.
And I tried it out and whatever. And it wasn't like, it was survival, but I wasn't like trying to teach people how to do something. I was just like, this is what I have. I'm doing it so I can learn and see whatever, because this is the first time I'm sleeping this cold. And there were definitely a couple things that I learned that I didn't really know in those temperatures. First of all, I adamantly stated multiple times that I'm not going to pee in the middle of the night, right? I was like, I'm not going to. I'm going to do everything I can. I even resisted drinking water, like going into the night, simply because I did not want to have to get out. Now, obviously, if this was like I needed to get, obviously, if I was in a situation where I had to drink water or whatever, like I was being mindful of where my body was. I wasn't like hurting myself for science. I was just wanting to avoid having to. You don't need to give the disclaimer for the people who will whine and complain. We get it. You tried to not have to take a pee. Obviously, you're going to drink what you need to drink, but we don't need to appease the people who might be triggered by that concept. So, they get it. Yeah, you don't want to take a piss in the middle of the night because it's freaking freezing. Sure, it's a rational argument.
Of course.
So I found out some guy messaged me on Instagram and said, "Yeah, this is why this happened." Because like I drank a little water, I peed right before I went to bed, and normally if you do that, and when you're normally going to sleep, you don't have to get up in the middle of the night. And I still got up in the middle of the night, and I was just like, "How?" And when I went to the bathroom, man, it was like I drank 3 full glasses of water before I went to bed. And turns out, I guess when you're cold and the way that your body is like producing stuff and you're shivering and whatever it is, it's just, it does something where it's processing liquids inside of your body more like, I don't know, faster or whatever. And it can make you have to go pee. So I didn't really know that. So the first thing that I learned,
I want to make a comment on that. I could have told you that, and I'll tell you why.
Okay.
Because I, as you know, travel for work, and I sleep in my van, my converted van.
And it gets cold in the van.
It gets very cold at night. Because I've researched the same thing, because I also don't want to have to get up to take a piss at night when I'm in my van.
Pee bottle.
Yeah, that is something that happens in van life.
Yeah.
For all of you who kind of romanticize the whole van life idea, it's not as romantic as you may think it is, or as the Instagram influencers will lead you to believe. But I, like you, am always trying to not have to get up to go take a pee in the middle of the night, and I'll do the same thing. Or I've learned since, like, kind of like how to deal with that, but it is because of the cold. And even though I'm like warm in a sleeping bag and everything, but like from my research, it is something about your body is just operating differently, and therefore that's why no matter, even if you take like the littlest amount of water, you're just exactly like you said. You get up, you feel like you just drank 3 cups of water before you went to bed when you take a pee.
Yeah.
It's fascinating, and it's unfortunate every time, but continue.
Yeah. So I was like, okay, whatever. I got up. I did it carefully. It was fine. I don't know why I was complaining so hard. It really isn't that big of a deal.
Well, it's just cold.
It's just a little bit of a nuisance. But
really
once I did, I felt so much better, and I was
sleep.
able to go back to sleep.
Yep.
Right. So one thing I realized and I'll try to make this kind of quick, right before you set up your tent and everything, or your hammock or whatever, winter camping, you've been hiking, you're warm, your body's adapted to the temperature and everything. And then you have like a certain amount of time to where you obviously should get everything set up and ready, because if you stop moving, then you're going to get cold. Mm-hmm. And once I did that, it was probably almost a half an hour, because I was making the video, I was taking my time. Once I got in my hammock, after a few minutes, I noticed everything kind of felt like moist. It just felt very like damp inside, but not like damp like it was wet. It was just like you could kind of just feel a very slight like moisture to the lining of everything. And I was very confused why, because everything was dry. It was a very dry night. I didn't get anything wet. And I realized it was my clothes warming up from maybe little moisture within, my layers and whatever, because I didn't change anything. It might have been different if I actually changed layers right before I went to bed. But it ended up kind of like the hammock kind of like sucked the moisture out of me, if that makes sense. And like I was causing there to be some warmth inside of the hammock, or moisture, because of how the ratio between the cold and the heat. Huh. And
you weren't too warm, like overdressed, because with like 0-degree sleeping bags, I find too when I'm in my van,
I didn't strip down to my underwear.
Even if it's super cold, even if I'm in the van and it's 8 degrees outside, if I'm wearing like a pair of sweatpants in the 0-degree sleeping bag, forget it. Way too hot.
No, it's almost minus 30.
But I'm saying you weren't like sweating though.
No, not at all. No, it was just a kind of a nuisance. I was very comfortable. It's just a little bit of moisture just kind of like made it a little bit uncomfortable. And I was like, okay, well, this is, I wasn't actually staying efficiently as warm because of it. And I think it was because it was so cold outside. And eventually, after a good hour and a half, it dried out. Everything dried out. My body cooled down. The hammock kind of ventilated. The sleeping bag kind of dried out. And after everything was said and done, I was entirely dry. But then that's when I had to go pee. So then once I got back in the hammock after all of that, I felt great. So I don't know exactly how to, maybe changing clothes can get away with that. But the biggest problem, the whole thing, and it's not a problem, it was
learning experience. Yeah,
it was just, again, another nuisance. There's not a proper way in those temperatures to get proper ventilation without either your face being brutally cold or wet. Because I'm breathing inside of the hammock, and after a while, the moisture condensed on the top of the hammock, but froze. But where my breath would hit the hammock specifically would cause little droplets, and then like the weight of the ice on the hammock from my breath would actually start to like settle onto my face, and then I had to keep wiping my face and wiping.
Don't hit the microphone.
Yeah, sorry. Wiping my face and like wiping it off, and it just kept happening overnight. Then I eventually kind of learned to just take the top part of my sleeping bag that's not going to touch me and just use it and just wipe that part of the hammock. But that was just a nuisance because it would just occasionally like touch me and that it would kind of wake me up a little bit. Yeah, so just kind of trying to learn that whole environment was kind of hard, but it's like if I had to sleep outside, I could have, and I survived the night.
You're a lot more, you're a lot better off now because of those experiences and learning that on the day.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously you've mentioned to me that, you work with people who do this all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So you get good, tutelage from these people. But like, I mean, there's so much you're only going to learn when you're out there doing it. So
you got to go out and do it.
Exactly. I mean, especially in these types of temperatures,
I'm not going to get better at skiing watching my friends do it.
Totally.
But it's also being taught well. Like, I mean, I don't know if we were going to talk about skiing or anything, but if we did, I'll tell you this. For anyone that's like wants to get in the backcountry skiing or whatever, okay, first of all, know what type of gear you're getting. Make sure you know exactly what you're trying to accomplish and that you get the appropriate gear for it, and don't be like light on the money. Be willing to actually get the right thing.
Yep.
And whatever you want to ski, get exactly what is designed for that and learn with that. Right. So if you like downhill skiing, but you want to try a little bit of a backcountry, it's unfortunate, but you're going to have a lot harder time learning if you try to take your downhill skis and then learn how to backcountry with them. So it's like I wanted to start learning how to really ski strictly in the backcountry. So I was up with my workplace coworkers from High Peak Cyclery, and we had a ski party, and I took an awesome alpine touring volet skimo setup, lightweight boots, alpine touring binding, the skins, scales on the bottom of the skis, metal edge, and it's like a downhill ski, but for the backcountry. And we went to the top of Mount Joe and skied down Mount Joe. So Mount Joe has a really awesome ski trail in the back side. I don't know if I was supposed to say that or not because I've learned how secretive the ski community is.
Yeah, it's very secretive.
I didn't know it was there.
It's called
until I started. Yeah, it's like the ski community is like, there's people like at the high peaks like, oh, don't tell them about that trail or don't tell them about that mountain. Bro, this is like next level. Like I actually even had someone like see me on top of Algonquin at one point. I was just hiking and he's like, oh, hey, yeah, I know your videos. Yeah, I saw you started to ski. Word of advice, don't give away our secrets. And I was just like,
there it is.
Noted. I mean, I knew this like because I hang around all these skiers. So I am going to be putting out some skiing videos, but I'm only going to probably show stuff that everyone knows.
Yeah, but here's the thing. To those people, don't give away our where we're going. I mean, compared to the people, let's just say watching your videos, listening to the podcast, maybe 0.01% of people might decide, oh, I'm going to start skiing and I'm going to go there and I'm going to do this. Well, like this idea that by you saying that or showing this is going to somehow tell hundreds of people where these trails are, or they're going to suddenly be there skiing. Come on, let's be realistic. That's not what's going to happen.
I mean, I will say that
some might, not many.
The only downside that I've realized towards there being other people skiing in other places that like finding a secret place, like, hey, how'd you know about this place, is that now you're kind of skiing everything off and then the next person just doesn't get it. Obviously, there's like some selfish motives to it, but there's also like it's a lot more dangerous and I mean, I'm not trying to justify, like, I don't necessarily call it gatekeeping, but I do see, and I think now that I'm within the skier community a little bit more, it's like, you find out about it through just like doing it and pointing out lines and then like doing your own research, right? Cause like there's I'm not going to say what they are, but there is some ski trails, some awesome glade skiing in the Lake Placid area. And people were like, John, don't tell people about this place. I'm like, he's like, don't even put it on your Strava. Like, this is our own secret. I'm like, okay. And then once we got up to the top and get ready to ski down, some guy came and was like, oh, hey, where are you guys from? How'd you find out about this place? So everyone's just like very protective, I guess, about it. And I guess since that's just what everyone in the skiing community is, I'm not going to necessarily argue with it. I'm just going to be like, listen, I haven't been skiing my entire life. So I'm just like, if this is what they wish, then I'm just going to respect that and just be that way.
I get it, but skiing in particular, and I'm glad we're talking about
0.01% of anyone going to that area.
And backcountry skiing is such a niche. I just feel like realistically, if the numbers could come in and we could see the statistics, I don't think that would encourage that many people. It's honestly, in my opinion, it's the same concept as like, you and I have had conversations about what's it called where you put the name up of where you are on
geotag.
Yeah. You and I have had conversations.
No one's
going
to go hike the Dix Range for a sunrise just because they see a beautiful sunrise.
Exactly. That's how I feel.
Like less people are going to hike the Dix Range than Indian Head.
The overwhelming majority of people are going to say, "Oh, that's cool," and they're going to move on with their life.
Yeah. When they see how difficult it is.
A few people might go, but like, how else are you going to learn about
There's
something?
a balance.
Either a picture from someone or someone told you about it. You're not going to stumble upon half of these spots. But with skiing, I would say it's that to an extreme degree, especially backcountry skiing.
But everyone's protective about it. It's
I know, and I get that, but I feel
yeah.
like you don't necessarily have to be, because realistically, I bet it's not. But of course, I'm sure I would be told I'm wrong, and that's fine. I could be wrong, but my gut tells me that it really wouldn't be that. It wouldn't become that popular.
Yeah.
But anyways,
so
continue.
I got into backcountry skiing. That's what I wanted to do, and I'm going to tell you right now. And listen, I don't necessarily want to consider this inspirational advice, but like seriously, guys, consider this.
Get your notepad out.
Right?
Take
notes.
Not
necessarily consider this, but I'm going to just say this, and people are going to probably be like, "Okay, I think I might get into this now because he said this." But I haven't owned my snowshoes. Are on display of my Winter 46 show, which by the way is touring at the View at Old Forge. So if between now and March 16th or 19th, March 19th, you want to check out my Winter 46 show and you didn't get a chance to see that this past summer, it is at the View in Old Forge and everything is there. Shameless plug. So
necessary.
Yeah.
Go see it. It's awesome. I was on many of those hikes. Fantastic pictures.
And I what was I saying?
Skiing. You're going to make this declaration.
Oh, right. Yeah. So my only pair of snowshoes that I own are on display there. All right. I have not put on a pair of snowshoes since last winter because now when I'm in the backcountry, I'm only on my skis.
I wouldn't wear those MSR snowshoes anyways. Those are better served like over there.
Oh, is that because
I'm a Tubbs man all the way.
I also
Tubbs snowshoes better than MSR for Adirondack backcountry hiking. We're going to do a whole episode on it one day.
Hey, Amanda Riggs' Tubbs broke on her the other week. The whole entire crampon completely snapped in half. Everything. So, yeah. I don't know. I will say this, though. I will say this. Okay, all right. I didn't use my snowshoes this winter, but I did use my roommate's Tubbs once because I did need a pair of snowshoes or something because I couldn't choose to ski. So I did use them, and I thought the grip was great and everything.
Great.
I loved how the ease of getting out of them
Binding,
was
fantastic.
It was fun. It was good, but I like the polycarbonate composite of the MSRs a little bit better. But
all about that polycarbonate composite. I live for a good polycarbonate composite.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry. Continue. So you've been skiing. I just loved it. I love the MSR
so I
Tubbs
haven't
debate.
The kind of not advice necessarily, but it's like people will be like, "Hey, we're gonna go hike in the wintertime. Come join us, or can we join you on any hikes?" It's like, guys, I'm not hiking anymore. Sure. I'm on my skis.
That's okay though.
You're walking out of Marcy Dam. I'm flying past you on my skis, and you're gonna feel slow. It's so great because, like, for example, last winter I went and I did tabletop and Phelps. How long would that take you to winter hike that on a good packed out day?
I don't know. You tell me. I don't remember how long.
I would say 6 to 7 hours.
Sure.
I did it. I did it in 3.5 car to car.
Solid.
I did Allen 6.5 hours car to car. On
Fantastic.
skis, and it's the right pair of skis, the right conditions.
So now when you skied, let's talk about this for a second now that we're on skiing. So you skied into Allen. Obviously, that's just you're skiing in.
There is a limit depending on conditions and experience, what you're capable of doing on your skis. So I did have I have my snowshoes with me, and I skied all the way into Skylight Brook, the 1 mile before the summit.
Yep.
And you're going to snowshoe up a mountain faster than skinning up.
Got it.
That's 100%.
That was what my question was
no matter
going to
what
be.
you have, no matter who you are, you're going to snowshoe up a high peak on the trail faster than going up on your skis.
But coming down,
you could also come back faster, depending on the mountain, because you can just walk and go down the trail without having to stop and carve and pick out lines.
Sure.
And if it's a technical descent, snowshoeing up and down a high peak like that is so much faster.
Good point. And you kind of ski on your snowshoes at some point on some parts of the trail.
Sure, or butt slide.
You go really fast.
Butt slide,
especially with Allen. Allen lends itself
so
well
definitely,
to that.
It depends on the mountain. But for example, if you're doing Marcy, you're going to do car to car in 3 hours doing Marcy. Tabletop and Phelps, like I skied in, and then I did snowshoe. I wasn't like, depending if there's enough snow, I would probably feel comfortable skiing those peaks now. Maybe tabletop has, it's kind of a little bit more open and not as narrow, I think, as Phelps. But
now when you're coming down, let's talk about this for a second, because I have a question.
Yeah.
You're coming down, let's say take Marcy. So you're skiing down, because I've never come across a skier. Period.
Let me know when
winter
you're out
hiking.
next time.
I've
surprise you.
never come across one.
I'll make you. I'll
are
make
you
question.
skiing down the trail? I should say that I have been passed by skiers going back to Marcy Dam.
Sure.
Are you skiing down the trail, and then how are you stopping?
Yeah.
How are you going slow, or how are you? Obviously people might be coming up,
Yeah.
coming down. It's
This
a
is
lot
an easy
different
one.
of a world.
Yeah, it's entirely indicative of the trail you're doing. Entirely indicative. So, for example, if you wanted to go ski right peak, right peak has a ski trail.
Yes,
right?
it does.
So you can either go and skin up the ski trail, and until the base of the ski trail, it's wide. You can stick out both trekking poles to the left and right of you, and barely be touching the trees. Right, so I'd say you can have room for like 7 or 8 people, and it's very tracked out. It's not necessarily one solid like line, and people ski it all the time. So therefore, it's a nice wide open area.
That's designed for skiing,
right?
Whereas like hiking trails aren't.
Marcy is the same way.
Okay.
Marcy is a very commonly sought after mountain to ski, and they even have a dedicated ski trail at one section called the Corkscrew. And that's like when it's right to the bottom of the Corkscrew is when you get to the pretty much it's the turn off. You hit this river and it turns right, and there's a sign that says tabletops this way, right? So there's like this river merge, and then the top of the Corkscrew is where the tabletop turnoff is.
Okay.
Or not turnoff, but the
junction.
Yeah,
yep.
the junction there. And so it's a good section of ski trail, but the whole entire trail up to Marcy is just so wide and so open that it's entirely skiable.
Okay.
Entirely skiable.
That's cool.
But let's take, for example, something like I don't know, like the Great Range. Okay. There's definitely stuff like, there's only one person who's ever claimed to, ski all 46, and that's Ron Kahn. And there's a couple people who are currently also doing it. And I definitely see where the challenge is, because it's not that just people aren't doing it. It's that there are peaks that are very technical and very challenging. And it's like, if the conditions aren't actually flawless and you're not an extremely skilled skier, you're going to be taking off your skis and stuff to get down sections because there's too much rock or too much ice or too much whatever, right? And there's no like shame in having to take off your skis for a little bit. You're being safe, you're going down the trail, and even in alpine mountaineering, ski mountaineering, like people are descending with ropes and stuff with their skis and whatever because they simply just can't get down with their skis, right? It's completely understandable. But like let's say I'm on Gothics going down to Lower Wolfjaw, right? If there's enough snow, enough powder, those trails are still like somewhat wide enough, as long as it's not like a foot deep of just a hard consolidated packed out snowshoe trail. Because then you could obviously have problems where you're turning and trying to get past trees and whatever. So I do understand what you're saying. And that's why a lot of those trails they're not skied. So when you're skiing high peaks, generally what you're doing is you're either skiing a peak that is accessible by skiing, like it's designed for that, or a lot of people do it, or you're on the flats and the trails, and at the big uphill sections and those technical sections, you're just switching to your snowshoes. And if you have the right setup, you can be quick about it. And if you have the right ski boot, I have like my ski boots, I could actually spend all day and just walking around them like they're winter boots. They're designed only for alpine touring. I could not downhill ski with them. They're not MTN ski boots like what we know of at groomer trails. So they're designed for the type of skis that I have there. And I can actually just pop off my skis real fast, attach them to my backpack, or just stash them with my pack or whatever, throw in my snowshoes and go. And it's really fast and efficient. And so that's my methodology. So there's definitely...
Seems perfect for backcountry purposes.
It is. So like if I were to go do Redfield and Cliff, I would ski all the way in. I would go up Lake Arnold, go down, ski over the floating logs, water ski over the floating logs.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then once I got to the junction, I would... Now, if there's a ton of snow, you could actually probably ski Redfield. There are some sections because then you have the Redfield Brook coming down and whatever, but that's if it's like perfect. But rationally, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stash my skis at the intersection and then just go
hike it.
Just go hike them both and get my skis and come out.
And that'll be a quick day.
Still be 10 times faster.
Absolutely.
So yeah, that's what I'll probably do.
That's fascinating because I've always been curious about the skiing in the backcountry.
Like you could see like Mount Marshall, like the trail's wide enough, then you hit Herbert Brook and all that, and you could ski down that.
Sure.
And even things like Street Nye, it's wide enough, it's gladed out enough. There would be some sketchy sections like coming right off of right off of the top going down from the intersection is where I'd probably maybe boot pack just a little bit and then grab on my skis.
Boot pack. There's a phrase. Write that down, people. Boot packing.
Not to be confused with post holing.
Not to be confused with post
because post holing is what? It's like when you're going out and you're like weren't prepared and you're like making all these holes. Obviously, like there are sections where like, okay, maybe for like 50 yards or 100 yards, I don't have my snowshoes. I just have my skis, and I'll have to take them off, and then I'd have to like walk like either on the trail or try to avoid the trail because you would be post holing. But it's for a short amount of time, and it's like you don't want to have to, but you're prepared for it, but you're not prepared for it. So
that's cool. No, that's very cool. I've been curious for a long time how this, what the workflow is of skiing in the high peaks or even in the 80K in general, backcountry skiing. So basically the workflow is you'll ski trails that allow for it. You might skin up it and then just ski down it, and you're going to walk some of it just like you would be hiking in snowshoes.
Because going up the mountain, there's certain mountains that like going up on your snowshoes is faster going up and down, depending on how technical it is.
But I'm saying sometimes you will just skin up it on your skis.
Oh, yeah.
The same way you'd walk up it with snowshoes.
Right.
And then other mountains, if you're skiing other mountains, you may ski to the mountains and then switch over to your snowshoes and just hike it like a normal hike and come back down. So that's basically the workflow. That makes perfect sense.
Today is a good example. I'm going to go do Snow Mountain. I'm going to go up Deer Brook and then go up Snow. And then I'm going to shoot on over to that Rooster Comb Trail and then backtrack back to the Deer Brook Trail and go down because there's some little trails in that section that I need to get. And it's like 5.5 miles of skiing. And as long as Snow Mountain has, at least 6 to 8 inches of kind of powder over the exposed rock and stuff like that, it'll be completely fine to get down. And so, you can ski all that.
That's great. That's great. Speaking of skiing, we got to get you out of here so you can get on with your day. So let's bring this episode full circle. So we've talked about the winter redline, which involves winter camping, and now backcountry skiing, which is what your current adventures are involving. So,
I want to add one thing.
Do tell.
If there's anyone, and that's obviously time sensitive to when the pod, like obviously like by the time March 21st rolls around, this is irrelevant. But if there is anyone who does consider them an experienced backcountry skier and is out and accessible, I definitely am looking for partners to join me on some of these overnights, because it's like, mentally and just, it's like, nice having people with you, especially deep in the backcountry. And I've exhausted my connections and whatever, and so most people just they're busy or just it doesn't work out.
It's good to cast a big net with this sort of thing.
Yeah, so it's like, feel free to message me on Instagram if that's something you're looking to do. Long 20-30 mile days, cross country, backcountry skiing on some flats and whatever. So
all right, very cool. So you have 13 more outings to complete your winter redline goal, and you're always a goal seeker, and I appreciate that because I'm the same way. So where can people find you on social media and see some photos and videos of these adventures?
Yeah, simply just my name, Jonathan Zaharik. You can throw that even right in the Google. You'll find my YouTube, my Instagram, my website. You can just search my name on either of those platforms as well, and you'll find me. So pretty straightforward. Don't spell Jonathan wrong. There's no H after the O.
I feel like I've never seen the name spelled that way, but maybe
John.
Not with Onathan. It's one or the other. It's either John or Jonathan.
Or there's no O-N at the back.
No. Okay. All right. Great. Well, with that, we will wrap up this episode of the Summit Sessions. Jonathan, it was great catching up with you and hearing all about, once again, another winter goal here in the Adirondacks, an adventure that you're always creating for yourself as you seek to redline the High Peaks region.
Maybe I'll find a Yeti back there. A winter Adirondack Squatch.
I mean, I guess at what point does it become a Sasquatch, and what point does it become a Yeti?
They're probably geographic.
I'd say they're pretty similar in nature. But anyways, so that's going to wrap up this episode of the Summit Sessions. Jonathan's about to go out there and enjoy a nice day at Snow Mountain. And thank you, everyone, for listening to yet again another Summit Sessions with Mr. Jonathan Zaharik. The man's always out there having a good adventure, and it's always great to catch up with him. Thanks for listening to the episode. Check back on Fridays. I'm pumping out episodes as often as I can lately. New episodes, new stories, new mountains, new guests, and just all sorts of new stuff coming to the podcast here. Much appreciated. If you like the show, please leave a rating and review at Apple Podcasts. I'd very much appreciate it. If you're looking to hike the high peaks and you're brand new, I would highly recommend you go to 46of46.com and check out my ebook. I think it's the perfect start to give you all the pertinent information you need to have a successful high peaks adventure here in the Adirondack Park. And that's going to do it. Thanks, everyone, for listening. Remember to always leave no trace, do the rock walk, and if you carry it in, carry it out. See you on the trails. And if you want to start skiing, do all your homework and buy the right gear.